Hello, I'm Mega. You're about to see a stream highlight from my stream discussing episode 1 of Age of Umbra, where I have a big theory about what is going on with everything, and more specifically, who Laura Bailey's character is going to be. Spoiler alert, I think she's going to be a Clank. And if you just want to skip straight to that theory, there are chapters down below, so you can skip straight to that, although I think it makes a lot more sense if you have some of the context from earlier in the stream, but feel free to skip that if you want. Feel free to let me know how right or wrong you think I am down in the comments, and join next Wednesday to chat about either this theory or anything else I said live. We're streaming every single Wednesday talking about the Age of Umbra episode. The episode that this is from is also going to be linked in the description if you want to see all of the beautiful context. And without further ado, enjoy. Misty could be a god that lost her power. Could be. I definitely think that we could find out that the Clanks are the forgotten gods. And especially, oh boy, wait a minute. Follow me through on this, right? The veiled gods. Okay, you've got my head spinning a little bit, right? Age of Umbra. I only need to look up the title image. Look at this bad boy. That sure looks like a veil to me. Both like the physical mask and the that looks like a habit sort of veil. But that kind of looks like something that could be considered a veil. That's a statue. And we know that again, these inanimate objects can carry memories with them. We have these objects that can carry memories. I could absolutely see this idea of, we were originally told that the Clanks were inhabited by spirits, and the spirits of the god, or the like servants of the gods. They were divine spirits, but they weren't the gods. But could that just be something that people are assuming because they think that the gods left? So it only logically follows that if the gods left, the spirits inhabiting the Clanks couldn't be the gods because some of the spirits are still around. So I could totally see that as this as the veiled gods left insofar as they were as their memories were removed from them. And in fact, it could even be that within this setting, within this cosmology, the memory of a god is split between their kind of soul spirit and the object that they inhabit. So maybe like their short-term memory, or maybe, maybe like the parts of them that hold like their personality, their likes, their interests are contained within their spirit. That's sort of what you could call their consciousness, right? Because consciousness is not necessarily tied to memory, at least, within certain philosophical frameworks. Consciousness is not explicitly tied to memory. So it could be that the consciousness of the gods are these spirits, but they had their memories. In order to exist, they had to embed their memories within physical objects. And so when Misty inhabits the 9-winged or the 8-winged angel, she is confused. Her new memories are overriding old ones in ways that don't quite make sense. Those memories aren't hers. They don't quite match up. That's why she can't really gain access. They're the memories of a different god. And so it could even be that, in terms of what gods can do, godly powers, they might not be like an intuitive thing, or at least a fully intuitive thing. And it would be a way that the gods could have left and could still be around. It could be a way for these things that seem contradictory to be technically simultaneously true. The gods are still around in a physical or like metaphysical sense, where like the consciousness of like what, is the god, like the core essence of the god, is still around. But because they have forgotten essentially the presence of the gods for any practical purpose or application is gone. The practical, like, reality of a god is gone. That's a theory. That is a goddamn theory and a half. But also going towards this whole the gods and the fallen nature of this current world. I also thought it was interesting, and I wrote it down, that Matt explicitly said that the necrotic force that is animating them is compelling them to chisel away at Misty. Now, easily, 100%, Matt is a beautiful combat narrator. Matt is one of the most proficient combat narrators I've ever heard. I think that is easily flavor that he could have just interjected or injected within the scene to make the combat more compelling and more narratively interesting. But it does fit. It fits with what we're talking about. If the Umbra, this punishment that either caused the veiled gods to flee, recede, what have you, this seems to be a counterforce to the veiled gods. If Misty is basically two halves of two different veiled gods, one half of her is the memory of a god and one half of her is the consciousness of a totally separate god, then it would make a lot of sense that the necrotic force that is animating these zombies would want to destroy her body. That's half of a god. It would want to destroy as much of it as it can. And the more of these statues, the more of these Clank vessels that are destroyed, the more it prevents the veiled gods from returning. Mega, but it's not just the absence of the gods, right? It's also this malevolent invasion of dark forces. That has to come from somewhere beyond just the gods themselves forgetting. The gods forgetting themselves. Yeah, I agree. I think all living things have consciousness. Some consciousnesses are more powerful than others. And I think that this might lend itself possibly to Oracle Sight. I think it might lend itself to natural spellcasting, is this idea of a more powerful consciousness. However, memory is a aspect of the physical world and physical inanimate objects. For most sapient creatures, they have these big ol' brains that enable things like memory. However, they are not I think everything is probably conscious. Everything that is like living, or possibly even not living. So memory is an aspect of the physical world and physical inanimate objects. You need physical stuff in order to do something like remember something. If you don't have physical stuff that is capable of remembering, then you just can't. So in this cosmology and worldview, something like a tree or a rock or a deer is conscious. It's just that they can't remember, or they can remember differently because their physical meat is not capable of maybe the like higher order or like more complex thinking compared to something like a fawn. And I do think that possibly clank vessels have to be like specifically constructed in order to hold a consciousness. I don't think that you can just throw down a random vessel, and I support that. I should also say clank vessels are specifically designed to allow them to facilitate higher, or to allow a consciousness to enact higher order reasoning, morality, etc. etc. All the things that a normal meat brain is capable of. I partially believe this due to the runes that Misty touched, giving her a flash of memory. Those runes are essentially a magical brain that the inanimate object can store memories and such in. That's what I think. So, what I think happened with the apostasy. I think the apostasy was God King Obadiah trying to elevate his consciousness to the same power level as the gods. However, something went wrong, or possibly he overdid it to the point that he could not be contained within a vessel. And some of you might see where I'm going with this. I think that the Umbra is God King Obadiah. So, God King Obadiah is the Umbra. We've never left the Halcyon domain. We are still being ruled over by King Obadiah. In fact, we're being ruled over him so much that it's his age. And he's not a fleshy, stupid human anymore. He took on a new godly name to encompass his brilliance. He is the Umbra. Potentially, his form is unstable. I'm saying he is the black smoke monster. That is exactly what I'm saying. You nailed it. Potentially, his form is unstable and requires feeding. Or potentially, he just sucks up other consciousnesses for the fun of it, growing his stormy form. That's my thought. So, I think that God King Obadiah not only is the Umbra, but I think that he is the one that essentially shunted all of the veiled gods out of their bodies, forcing them to lose their memory. I do not think that they just left and abandoned us. I think that Obadiah, during his ascension, forced them out of his bodies and made it to where it seemed like he left, or they left. Does he know he's changing subjects like science experiments or as an accident? I don't know. And in fact, actually, you know what? I'll say it because I'll commit to this. I don't think he can remember. I think the Umbra is essentially a mass of consciousness with no physical vessel to give it higher order reasoning or memory. I don't think it knows what it is doing. Like, imagine, because consciousness is this huge mystery, right? Like, imagine being conscious but just not being able to remember anything. I wouldn't be able to call that evil or malevolent. It is just an experience. It's an experience with no past or future. It is only the now. You can only react to the direct thing that you experience. And not only can you not remember the experience, you can't remember your own reaction. You can't change. You can't evolve. You can't really even have a direction or a purpose. You certainly can't have morality. Because I would posit that morality requires an amount of foreknowledge of your actions and the effects that they will have. If you can't remember anything, you can't remember what anything around you is. You can't remember who your subjects are, who you are. You would be totally adrift. And I think that is exactly what's happening to the Umbra. It is described as a storm because I think it has basically no will of its own. It is just pure experience. What does that mean? I don't fucking know. But I think he is totally unaware. I think whatever we would have thought about as the personality of the person that committed the apostasy, that was eliminated with Othediah's body. That is gone. That is shredded and is no more. Othediah died, and the Umbra was birthed from his consciousness. Any quick predictions? Quick predictions? I'm going to say that the Firmaments Harrow is going to tell us something about the apostastic, the pre-apostasy religion. The Veiled Gods' religion. I don't know exactly what, but whatever they would consider to be the tools of heaven are going to give us some insights into their thought process. And to link it down even more, to really, to firm it up, I predict we are going to see, it's going to look like a sculpture museum. I think it is going to be row after row, potentially, of clanks. Of clank vessels, specifically. Ones that are either broken or shattered or just empty. And I think that Misty will be able to touch at least one of them and see some memories from them. And I think that that is going to be the meaning of the name, is that the clank vessels were the tools of heaven. Heaven needed the clank vessels in order to come and inhabit the earth and work their divine works. Maybe, possibly even, this is a little bit even more out there, it possibly might look something like a masonry workshop, like a sculptor's, like a marble sculptor, like their workshop. And we might even see something that looks like Misty, that's like a work in progress. and like hasn't been completed yet, and Misty has like this really weird feeling of familiarity to it or something like that. I don't know. Or one that is shattered potentially. I don't know. But so this could be like in the same way that like Catholic monasteries like are known for producing wine, which is a core part of the traditional ceremony of the Catholic religion, you know, the body and blood, whatever. A lot of monasteries were dedicated to producing that sort of stuff. I could see in a very similar sense, and this is regardless of whether or not my prediction around Umbra and Othedias or whatever, regardless of my predictions around what caused the Umbra, either way, the Clanks were formerly, you know, divine servants. And so the idea that a monastery, in a parallel to how monasteries make wine in real life, the idea of a monastery that crafts the bodies of Clanks, that prepares these bodies for their holy inhabitants. I mean, fuck. If we want to go even further with it, in Catholic tradition, it is seen as the wine being literally transformed into the literal blood of Christ, literally divine essence, not in a symbolic way, in a literal manner. That would really parallel to a monastery making these husks, these vessels that the divine then comes down to inhabit, in the same way that Jesus is made real, is made material within the wine. So that's my prediction. It's going to be like a sculptor's workshop that was this Luzal monastery. That was their kind of purpose and calling, is they crafted Clanks. Especially given, you know, that Misty's in the party. Yeah. I like the Clank prediction if you just want to be right but not fun. Come on! What do you mean? You don't think that's fun? Okay, you want me to give a wacky prediction? I'll give a wacky prediction. Here's my wacky prediction for you. I think Velk is Liam. We're locking it in. I'm not gonna dance around it anymore. I could be totally wrong. Velk could absolutely be Laura, but I'm gonna lock in. I think it's Liam. Second prediction. I think Laura, hear me out on this, is another Clank. But I think she's gonna be like a Michelangelo looking motherfucker, because I think she will be inhabiting the Clank vessel that King Obadiah, or whatever the fuck his name was, Othedias. I think she's going to be inhabiting the vessel that was crafted for Othedias. And I think he crafted himself this like, fuck, it's gonna be like inlaid with gold fucking runes and precious gemstones everywhere. And like, it's gonna be like, she's gonna be like, having sat on like the high seat of the monastery for millennia, and is like kind of going a little insane. Like remembers some of it, but like remembers some of like the apostasy, because Obadiah tried to shove his expanded consciousness into this vessel. So it's also like dark and stained with these dark malevolent cracks. And that would potentially, and she's a sorcerer. All right, we're getting even more into it. And wait, right? Absolutely. I think that Laura Bailey is playing a Clank sorcerer. And I think that she, not necessarily, I don't think that she shares a consciousness or a fragment of the consciousness with Othedias. You know, we can call him Smokey too. I think that the Clank vessel that she inhabits was the vessel created for Smokey 2. He tried to inhabit it. It didn't work. It couldn't fucking contain him. And so now it was left in the monastery. This might even end up being, you know, part of the source of the apostasy. We might find a bunch of evidence of, like, this is where the Umbra expanded out from. Smokey 2, sorry. And, and Laura Bailey is a, like, feminine identity, a femme Clank consciousness, one of the veiled gods, maybe even the veiled god that maybe Othedias could have gotten into the vessel, but maybe one of the other veiled gods stopped him. Maybe that shit's Laura Bailey. You know, while we're on the crazy conspiracy right now, I'm gonna say it is. I'm going to say that Laura Bailey's character is the veiled god that ultimately stopped Othedias from fully ascending. She couldn't stop him from elevating and expanding his consciousness. But when he was trying to enter the vessel, she shoved him out. She basically plugged the hole. And as a veiled god, she is much more used to operating one of these Clank vessels. That is how she has existed in the material world. And so she was able to outpower Othedias, essentially. And she thought maybe he'll float around and we'll be able to deal with him, but his consciousness was so expanded that she accidentally created the Umbra.